So we're ready to proceed. So welcome everyone. This is the September meeting of Public Health and Safety, and we have a full agenda. So what I would like to do is start with the EAC recommendations. This is a climate action plan that's been a year in the making, and then go to the shade tree recommendations, and then go to the discussion of a possible mask ordinance. We have the monthly report filed by our police chief. Thank you, John. And we will need your input when we get to the mask ordinance. But I thought we would kind of flip the order of things this month so that we have enough time for the EAC recommendations, especially. So with your consent, we will proceed to the EAC.
Certainly, I understand.
Thank you, John. Unless, Sean, there's something that you wanted to share by way of update.
No, thank you.
Okay, so we have Joe Toscano here from the EAC, and Joe has been working on this plan for many, many months, and this plan was made possible by the ICLEI membership and the DEP grant program that we've been a part of. We were one of, I think, 20 municipalities statewide over the past year. And so the CAP is the culmination of that 12-month project. And I'm very grateful to the EAC, so many hours that Joe, Jesse, and the EAC have put into producing this. And I know Sean, as the manager, has had time to review it and make comments. And so this is a moment when it's now coming to our committee to see what questions we have, to see if we are in a position then to recommend it on to the council as a whole. So with Joe here, I thought I would ask Joe if there's anything you want to say by way of kind of updating the committee on the state of the CAP, if there are any kind of additions that you made toward the end, or feel free.
Thanks, Rob. I don't have much to add other than what you say. I also just want to, acknowledge and thank, in addition to EAC, the contributions from the members of the Climate Action NERBs and NERBs group who helped a lot with giving input in various forums to the Climate Action Plan, as well as those who contributed in the 2 public forums that we held, who gave us a lot of really great ideas and really valuable input to that too. So I don't have too much to add. So I think you guys all have a copy of it. The current Climate Action Plan, we have a complete now. We have all of the pieces in place needed, which is primarily our greenhouse gas emissions inventory, our array of actions that we are recommending that we can take, as well as the beginning of a monitoring plan so we can monitor our progress going forward. So those parts together constitute the entirety of the Climate Action Plan. And that's where it is right now. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you guys have about specific parts of it or any big picture questions about it.
Okay, thank you, Joe. So we could take some time now to go around and see if there are any questions. I mean, just to give kind of a bird's eye view, I think there are maybe 10 key actions recommended around that number. Is that right, Joe? Or 10?
Yeah, well, so we have them divided up based on 3 main categories that the way all our greenhouse gas emissions are organized around. Well, I guess more than 3, but we got residential buildings, commercial buildings, transportation, waste, solid waste, and composting and recycling, and then borough government actions. And so we have within each of those between 3 to 5 individual actions that we can take in each of those different categories. So there are quite a few options in total. Some of these we have already quantifiable numbers of sort of the impact that they would have on our emissions. Others are either more difficult to quantify, or we just don't have those numbers yet, or they're things like having a climate action fund or things like that, which indirectly impact emissions, even though we can't have a specific number in terms of the actual greenhouse gases emitted. But yeah, those are all of the actions that we have together across all those different categories. Did you want me to say anything more about any of the specific actions? So it's a pretty broad array, but I can go over whatever you guys would like.
Yeah, well, let's see. Maybe we could just go around and see if anyone has questions. Mona, do you want to start?
Sure. So thank you, Joe. Thank you, Sean, for looking over the plan. Thank you to everybody who's volunteered their efforts on this, because I think it's crucial we move forward on 100% renewable energy by 2040 and set an example for other towns to follow. And I know a lot of work went into this, so I really appreciate all your work. I think, you know, we're already seeing some of the ways that extreme weather is costing us more money, whether it's, you know, damage from trees, power outages, stormwater. We're already experiencing some of those economic costs to our borough because of you know, severe storm flooding, frequent power outages, you know, and we're seeing more heat waves. So I think it's crucial. It's crucial not only for public safety, but also for our economic future. And again, you know, often it's the most vulnerable citizens who are hurt the most when there's extreme weather. And we're seeing in other parts of the country, you know, more severe hurricanes or more wildfires. So I think it's really important that we move forward on this. So I think every town needs to do our part. So thank you for that. And also for the public, quick PSA, I think it's important for residents and businesses to know that it's very easy to switch in just a few minutes to switch your electric and your natural gas providers to renewable sources with one phone call. So I think that's something that residents can do. The government can do our part. We can get the borough part of the way here, but private residents and businesses really will make even a larger impact from this. So I hope that that's something that, you know, people are really thinking about, how everyone can do their part. So I guess so one thing I would say, like, I liked looking at all the different things that we could do. So first, I guess I have a question for the EAC, and then I have a question for Rob about how this is going to look in borough government. You've done so much work on this, so I hate to ask you to do more work. You've done so much work.
Fine, it's fine.
There were a lot of things that I found really interesting that I'm wondering if the EAC in the future, now that it's done a great job of looking at a baseline scenario, looking at, you know, and proposing recommendations, I'd love to look at a deeper dive into some of the recommendations. So, you know, if there are comparable examples from similar towns that could maybe be win-win scenarios for us, where the borough could save money while reducing greenhouse gases. Because if we can save money and reduce greenhouse gases, that's like a no-brainer, and that's the fastest way to get things done. So, for example, things like the power purchasing agreements for renewable heat or electric, we might be too small to do that as a borough, but maybe on a regional level, we could look at examples of other regions that have saved money in the long run, as well as reducing greenhouse gases. I was really interested in the idea of neighborhood scale geothermal, to reduce the emissions from heating and cooling systems. And I'm curious, I think I read in one of the footnotes that it hasn't been seen they maybe didn't have towns to compare it to, but I'm curious, like, I mean, you know, schools do that. So maybe we possibly have enough room to do that, maybe with some of our public spaces or a public-private partnership. So I'm curious if there are examples of other places that have done this on a town level as maybe a public-private partnership. And the Renewable Energy Fund, I did have an actual, so I'd love it if maybe in the future the EAC could take a deeper dive and give us models of places that have done this and saved money and reduced greenhouse gases. But I know it's, you know, it's new territory. We're all looking at new territory. And I guess I had a question about the Renewable Energy Fund. That was one thing that was proposed to help residents and businesses afford the transitioning to greener, you know, homes and vehicles, what have you, because it's expensive for a lot of people to do this. Is that seen as like a micro loan fund, or is that like the borough would give grants, or it's not really specified? Because maybe if there were a way to have a renewable energy fund and break even or even generate small amounts of interest on it, that could be like another win-win. Because I think, our capital funds, we have to be really careful about our capital funds. So I think the low-hanging fruit would be all of the ways that we can save money in the future as well as reduce greenhouse gases. If we go there first, it could maybe free up dollars for things that will cost more money in the long run.
I'll answer that question specifically. I don't know. That's an interesting idea about the microloans. I haven't found any other municipalities that have done it quite that way. I think there are other ones where it's more like a grant or a rebate if you're choosing sort of the green or renewable energy option. But that would be worth looking into. I think the idea that we had in mind for that renewable energy fund more generally is to, one of the concerns that some members of the public raised in the public forums was that some of these, say, heating systems might have a higher upfront cost, even if they are more efficient or would save you money in the long run, and that could be impediment for a lot of residents. That's partly offset already from rebates from PECO and from federal tax credits, and so the idea would be to bridge whatever gap might be remaining. So if you had a choice between for example, a system that ran on natural gas that cost $6,000 and a system that ran on electricity and used a heat pump that cost $7,000, and you're able to get $600 or $700 in rebates from PECO and tax credits, maybe we could bridge that remaining $300 difference so that now cost no longer becomes a factor in that decision, essentially, is what we were thinking of with that. There's other ways you could extend it too, and I think the microloans idea is pretty interesting, something we could look into further, but that's definitely something I'm happy to look into more and find out how other municipalities have implemented those kinds of funds.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm curious because maybe I see the importance of a renewable energy fund for sure to help people, the cost of switching are expensive. But maybe, who knows, maybe we could partner with a group like Kiva or some other fund that could do the fund part, and we could give certain money, and and I don't know. It'd be, who knows? Kind of
right. I did find one program, and I'm forgetting which city it was, where it was, but they got a grant through the Department of Energy as seed funding to create one of these revolving funds, and that was a model that seemed to work well for them. So
okay.
I'll look into this more, and I can certainly, in future versions of this, we can definitely add more detail of those kind of things. Getting back to your larger point though about what's the most cost-effective thing we can do that will have the biggest impact, I think you're exactly right about a power purchase agreement, or just even residents and businesses switching their electric supplier. Many of the renewable suppliers are competitive with PECO's rates. Some are actually cheaper than PECO's default rates. So that's definitely an area where you can have a huge impact and save money. And so that seems like a great thing to incentivize if we can focus on.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mona. I guess I see the plan as kind of a roadmap, like how can we get from the resolution that the council passed to, setting that goal of 100% renewables by 2040, how can we actually get there? And this plan gives us a menu of options. There are many different ways to get there. Some new opportunities may emerge that are not even fully a part of the plan, because there may be a new opportunity in a few years that we can't foresee. But what I'm hoping is that we can come to some consensus at the committee level that we endorse the plan, as a menu of options, with that understanding that we're not expecting to necessarily do every item, all at once. But this is our roadmap if we're serious about achieving our renewable goals. And I think the plan would that's my hope. So are there other questions? I don't know if Bob is with us yet.
Yes, he's on the phone.
Okay. So yeah, any other questions from the committee for Joe?
Bob, Bob, are you going to get on? Because I'll just mention another thing if you're not.
Yeah,
He
I'm
might-
not hearing Bob. He may not be fully connected yet.
Okay.
But Joe, is that, am I describing it in the way that you see it, like as a menu of options?
Yeah, that's exactly how I see it. You know, and I think going forward, there will be new ideas, you know, and new things we can consider that we haven't really considered yet, too. So I think there are potentially more options in the future. But yeah, I think the way you described it is how I was thinking about it.
Okay.
I like the idea of a menu of options because I think you know, some ideas may end up being feasible in the short or long run, and some may not. So I don't want to lock us into details, but I
Yeah.
think if
Mona, could I just add one point to it? Because I think your point is a really good one. You know, maybe there is one of these 10 strategies that stands out as the most cost effective or the most doable. And, you know, by endorsing the plan, we are not necessarily picking which of the strategies to work on first. You know, we can continue to decide as a council what we would like to work on with, you know, in partnership with the EAC. And as Joe is saying, he and Jesse and the rest of the team can continue to research different options and advise us. But it does get us moving in a way that I think is really important, and is a plan that we could make public, you know, should the council adopt it.
Yeah, I like that. And I like in the early part, I mean, you know, who knows how our capital fund is going to be affected by the pandemic, right? We don't know. We still don't know in the future yet. But I like the idea, you know, the LED lighting is going to free up money for us, hopefully, to do other things. So if we can take, if the EAC could work together with borough staff to identify, here's the best places to start that could save us money first up front, and free up money for other possibilities in the future. Yeah, that would be awesome. And Joe, I'm sorry to give you more homework because really you have been phenomenal, and I've been so impressed just watching you work from the beginning, like how much you get done, and I am just so thankful to you and the EAC.
Oh, I'm grateful to everyone else who's also put in quite a bit of effort to making this all come together. So, and I'm happy to research whatever additional options you guys would like.
So one of the questions, Joe, with the ICLEI software, and this committee has recommended that we renew that $500 a year subscription. We can continue to track. I mean, the ICLEI software is essential to your monitoring plan that's proposed.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite valuable. So the ClearPath is the name of ICLEI's software. We use ClearPath for the greenhouse gas emissions inventory, for the borough government operations inventory, and for all of the actions that are described in the climate action plan that have sort of quantifiable metrics associated with them. So like switching some number of residents switch to a renewable electric supplier, that we can quantify what effect we have, and we use the ClearPath software to do that. So there are additional tools we can use in that to look at, for example, plan out different kinds of scenarios. What if this many residents decided to install solar? What impact would that have on our emissions? It has a number of other things built into it that we can take advantage of going forward. But definitely it'll be useful for tracking our emissions as we regularly update and monitor where we're at, as well as try and plan for new scenarios and new options that we're considering.
So, okay, so with that software and with your expertise now.
Nope. Rob's frozen on my screen.
Yeah, he's frozen on my screen too. This did happen in class a few times.
Yeah.
It's frozen in mine too.
Maybe he needs to exit and come back. But I don't.
Oh, you're back.
Okay, Hey, yeah, sorry. I just, I guess my question was just, with that software, you can update us on our progress.
Yes.
You can update the council, like on a 6-month basis or a 12-month basis, so we know where we are in terms of reaching our goals.
That's right. I think right now the way we've written it, I have to double check the exact timing on the monitoring plan, but I think what it calls for is to redo the greenhouse gas emissions inventory. It's either every year or every other year, and then also monitor progress on all of the different actions that we're implementing. And so, yeah, the ICLEI software will be really critical in being able to do that going forward, or something equivalent, if not ICLEI.
All right, so let me just ask the committee, because we're going to wrap up this discussion in a few minutes. As a committee, are we comfortable recommending the climate action plan on to council for council's consideration?
Absolutely.
Mona, that's a yes. Bob, I don't know if you're with us. Okay, are there any objections to moving the plan on for council's consideration? Okay, so I'm going to recommend then that this plan be considered by the full council.
Sure.
Okay, so Joe, I really want to thank you for all of the work that you've done to get us to this point.
Well, thank you guys. Appreciate your support. And Sean, I just want to mention, I did reply to your comments and questions that you made earlier today. So those are in there in the document now. So
Yeah, thank you. And Jesse, I was just sneaking a peek while everyone was talking about the plan, and I see the replies. Thanks for the dialogue.
Yep. And let me know, if you need anything else or what other information you guys would like.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much,
Sign
Joe.
off unless you need anything else, Rob.
Thank
I want
you.
to thank
Okay.
you also from a public safety standpoint. The climate change is affecting things like flooding in the borough and things that affect the police department. So I think overall, reducing our imprint will help reduce the stress on our police department. So I think it's good.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. I mean, the flood in early August was very, very stressful for, our emergency responders.
And they're happening more and more. And they're putting stress on our physical infrastructure in the borough. So, yeah.
That's right. All of these things are linked. Public safety, public health, and I would love to see Narberth be a town that inspires others, like you were saying. And so if we can adopt something like this and make it public, I think it will be inspiring.
So let me know once it goes through council, if there's things as mayor that I can do to help get the word out or help, explain things to the public. We can work together to help implement some of these changes. So.
Okay, great.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Thanks so much, Joe.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so I just want to review where we are in the agenda. So we reversed the order of things. So for the benefit of the public, we'll be taking public comment at the end of the meeting, which will be close to 7:30. So feel free to come in and out as you like, but we'll certainly have time for public comment at the end. The next item that we wanted to discuss was recommendations that are coming to our committee from the Shade Tree Commission. And the Shade Tree Chair is about to join the call, Rick Traley's, and he should be here in a minute. But these are a set of recommendations that came to us. I believe I shared them with the committee. But Rick can kind of walk us through what he's recommending and why. Does everyone have copies of it? Okay, so Sean, they may be coming into the waiting room.
Oh, thank you.
Carson Clark and Rick Traley's.
You got it.
Okay, welcome. I think we have Rick here, right?
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Rick. You're showing up as Carolyn, but we know who you are. Oh, there you are. Okay, so Rick and Carson are here. So Rick is the chair of Shade Tree and Carson is the vice chair of Shade Tree. So Rick, would you be so kind as to just give us the overview of your recommendations to our committee?
Sure. Thanks, Rob. Thanks, everyone, for giving us a little agenda time tonight. The long and short of it is that over the past few years, the Shade Tree Commission has wrangled probably close to 100 volunteers, and we've planted nearly 175 or so trees on the borough's streets. But it's become evident that, honestly, we can't keep up with the number and, frankly, the size of the trees that keep coming down. Being at home now, working at home with coronavirus, it's really distressing that almost every day I open my windows to work and hear a chainsaw somewhere, and then have the unpleasant experience of just going for a walk and trying to figure out where that tree is coming down. So basically, our plantings twice a year just aren't enough for us to really fulfill our mission of maintaining, restoring, and protecting Narberth's tree canopy. So we have a number of measures that we'd like to see considered. The first one, and I don't know what exactly you have in front of you in terms of documents, if you have like a packet with things in order. So I'll just go by what I have in front of me. But first, we believe that the borough ordinance, which enables the Shade Tree Commission, really needs to be updated. Some little things like just getting our number of members correct. Other bigger things like actually allowing us to take control of trees in the right of way. Right now, our ordinance says that the borough has that ability to control trees, but we don't really have the means to do it. So we believe that our general supporting ordinance needs updates. We also believe that trees are an important part of our streetscapes and our infrastructures, and we believe that we should approach them just like we approach curbs and sidewalks. When a house is sold, we believe that if it doesn't have street trees, we should require trees to be planted. A few years ago, we hired the Morris Arboretum at no small cost to inventory all of the trees in the borough and also inventory potential planting locations. And the Borough Council adopted that plan. We believe this plan would be a great guiding document for having new trees planted when a new homeowner moves in. Finally, we see now, I could give you 3 examples off the top on Woodside Avenue, where Carson and I both live, where a house is turned over and the new owner was required to put in new curbs. And those new curbs led to mature street trees being removed. And we understand the importance of curbing, but we also believe that we should have a process where we can try to balance the importance of the existing trees with the importance of installing new curbs, so that we don't just automatically tell a homeowner, you have to have a curb, and if your curbing contractor says the tree has to come down, then the tree has to come down. We would like to see some process implemented where we can at least have a discussion about how to approach that kind of situation. So I'm going off of what I have on my phone. I'm actually away on vacation, so I'm a little bit limited in my materials and my computer setup right now. Carson, do you have anything to add?
No, I think one of the important things that we also want to accomplish is shared goals with the Environmental Advisory Council and other groups in Narberth who really want to make efforts to, I guess it's really kind of like being conscious of how we as a community think about these things, instead of, as Rick used the example, it's like, oh, if you want a curb, got to cut down your tree because we've done it that way. So it seems like a good time for us to be using the information we got from the Morris Arboretum recommendations, and making smart decisions about how we want to go forward. So I just wanted to reemphasize that it is something that's important in the context of stormwater regulations from the state, many other reasons why planting trees and having trees is very important. So just another bit of context there. Thank you. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to say something. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you both, Carson and Rick, for being here. And I want to see what questions there may be from the committee members. We were just discussing the climate action plan, and the tree canopy is included in that plan as a carbon offset. So that's another important benefit of our trees. So maybe I'll just start with one question, and then we'll go around. Rick, when you were talking about the changes to the ordinance, so I think you mentioned taking control of the trees. That would be in certain circumstances, right? I mean, it's not as if the borough would become the responsible for taking care of every tree throughout its lifespan.
No, I think we're all approaching this similar to the way that the borough approaches curbs and sidewalks, that the borough would enforce, in this case, the need for trees to be planted. If the borough sees a hazard, certainly they would speak up, but we would still expect the homeowner to be responsible long-term.
Okay.
I'll be honest, we've thought about these things, and as a commission, we've talked about them, but I don't expect that the letters and memos that I've sent you are completely 100% correct. There's certainly room for figuring some of this out more.
Yeah, that's helpful. Okay, so thank you, Rick. So are there any questions from the committee? Recently the council endorsed the statement of purpose for the Shade Tree Commission to restore the canopy, and we are in danger of losing more and more trees as they age, and there are other reasons trees come down, not just through natural causes, but also because of curb requirements or maybe the personal preference of a homeowner. And at least in the right-of-way, the documents are recommending that homeowners would need to acquire a permit to bring a tree down in the right-of-way. So the right-of-way is roughly about 10 feet from the street.
Yes.
And so to clarify a little further, our existing ordinance refers to a necessary permit. As it is now, it says a homeowner has to get a permit to remove a tree from the right-of-way. So Ed sits in on many of our meetings. I said to him, well, Ed, what is the permit process like? What does a homeowner actually have to do? And he said, well, there is no permit. The ordinance calls for one, but there isn't one. So that's really the biggest ordinance amendment that we're asking for, is to actually put a permit process in place. And this may look like what Lower Merion does, where a resident applies for a permit and then they come and discuss it with the Shade Tree Commission. It could be it could be a joint consideration between the Director of Public Works, the Shade Tree Commission. We also have a consulting arborist that the borough uses. She may also be involved. But we think it's really important for us to actually get a permit process in place.
Okay, so are there any questions from the committee members for Rick or Carson?
Hi, Rob. This is Bob speaking.
Hi, Bob. Go ahead.
Finally, I've been listening the entire time. I just couldn't unmute you. Now I'm having an audio issue. No, I don't have any questions. I just wanted to express appreciation for the conversation you had with the EAC and their recommendations. I'm glad that's moving to council. So I just wanted to, dot that I, and also say that I don't have any questions for Rick or the Shade Tree folks at this point.
Okay, thank you, Bob. And that's a thanks to Jesse, who I think is listening in. Thank you, Jesse. we're happy to move the cap onto council.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jesse. So any questions for Rick or Carson, Mona?
So yeah, I have I guess a question for our Director of Public Works, Ed Harmon, as well as for the Shade Tree Commission. First of all, Rick and Carson, thank you so much for your work. I know this is a lot of work every single year, and I really appreciate that you are keeping our tree canopy going. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And again, you know, other people have said this, but it's essential to help us meet our climate action goals and also to meet our stormwater management goals. So it's not just about beautification. It's really about, you know, maintaining our infrastructure and keeping our neighborhoods safer. So I guess the question for Ed, I'll just tell you both of the questions and then so you both have time to think about them. My question for Ed is, have you seen these what are your thoughts about the proposal, and what do you think of it, and have you seen these type of permitting processes used elsewhere? I'm just curious to draw on some of your experience. And also for the Shade Tree Commission, you know, if we change the ordinance and everything and the permitting process, I heard you mention Lower Merion Township. I'm just wondering is this modeled on other shade tree ordinances? We're not going to be the first town doing this type of thing. What other places use this? Just, you know, so those are my questions.
I'll try to answer your first question first. Lower Merion, Radnor, Haverford Township all have shade tree ordinances as far as removal and care. So yes, we're trying to mimic what they're doing and try to comply with, you know, what the Morris recommendation is from 2008. So we're trying to move this process forward and continually plant new trees in the right of way or on private property where applicable, or where residents are amenable to that, you know, planting situation. Your second question, yes, we are working with other townships. We're working with other municipalities to try to make sure that we're complying and trying to rebuild our tree canopy to help reduce the watershed flow and stormwater management component of that. So it's those two components are key to each other. Did I answer your questions?
Yeah, thank you, Ed.
Okay.
I can
Thank
add
you.
as well that when we were drafting the amendments that we're requesting, we used Lansdale Borough's existing ordinance somewhat as a guide. It's not an exact copy by any means, but we wanted to find another community that had a tree ordinance that was also a borough and would be somewhat similar to Narberth. So we started with their ordinance as a guide and we discussed it, and we had Ed involved in those discussions as well.
Okay, thank you, Ed. Thank you. Are there other questions from the committee? Okay, let me ask if the committee would support taking these recommendations to the full council.
Yes, Rob. Yes, Rob.
Okay.
This is Bob. I think that's a good next step, is to take them there for a broader discussion.
Okay, thank you. I see a yes from Bob and from Mona. Are there any objections? Okay, we will move ahead with these recommendations and take it to the full council.
Thank you.
you. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
That's on the 16th of September, the next council meeting?
Yes.
Thank
Okay.
you very much.
We have another Shade Tree Commission meeting between now and that council meeting so we can discuss schedules and what we need to do at that meeting. We'll be ready when council's ready.
Okay, thank you both so much.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, so our next item is the proposed mask ordinance. And we need to, I guess, take, get a sense of the room here on what has been proposed. So far, we have just a draft that was developed by the solicitor, but it has, and it was discussed briefly at the last council meeting. But it has not kind of formally moved out of our committee. So I guess, the whole idea is kind of, stuck here in our committee, and it's up to us if we want to make a decision on either recommending it or we could just kind of decide as a committee that we would like it to be taken up by the full council. That we would.
Yeah, Rob, this is Bob.
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Bob. No, I just wanted to say that I think part of the reason we might be sort of stalled with this is that it's redundant to ordinance that already exists in Pennsylvania under the governor's rules. But I think it's a good idea to move this on to council as a recommendation, so that we kind of have belt and suspenders in the sense at least so that our local community can have jurisdiction over mask wearing, specifically within our commercial, retail, and restaurant areas. It's commonplace in other parts of the country for communities to require that people wear masks in their retail and commercial districts. And if for some reason the governor decides or his order expires and we're still feeling locally the need to keep that ordinance in place, I think it's good to have local control at this point. Thanks, Rob.
Okay, thank you, Bob. What I would suggest is why don't we kind of each take maybe 2 minutes and people could state their opinion. My sense is there's not agreement on this on moving forward with this. There's some people that support it and some that don't, and I think it would be helpful to hear both sides. And then my expectation is that we may, as a committee, we may either decide tonight or not decide tonight. But either way, it could move on to council. Sean, am I right? But if as a committee we decide we can't really resolve this question, we could simply bring it to the next council meeting to consider. So I'm aware of the clock, and I'm thinking that we could limit this discussion to about 15-20 minutes, so that we would end our meeting around 7:35. We want to have the last few minutes around 7:30 for public comment. So if you're agreeable, I'll be the timer. Could we go around the room and who would like to start? The mayor, would you like to start?
That's fine. So in some ways it would make life a little easier, and in some ways it would make life a little harder. This ordinance. There are times when I see folks walking in the downtown, not maintaining a 6-foot distance, and it would give our police something to enforce when confronting someone who's not wearing a mask. Now that key issue is the word confronting, and so there are some concerns I have in the interactions between the police and the public, with regard to this mask. And I don't want things to escalate. I want it to be a tool to be used in the right situations. And I also don't want the police to have nothing else to do but just go around looking for people with masks, because I think that's not a great use of our resources. limited resources. So, you know, I understand where it's coming from. I have a few concerns in implementation.
Okay, thank you, Andrea, and very succinct. That was 1 minute.
Okay.
Could we go to Mona?
Hello. Yeah, I was originally strongly in favor of the mask ordinance. I think wearing masks is the best way to slow the pandemic and save our economy. I think it protects the most vulnerable members of our community. So I just, another PSA, people, please, it's an essential courtesy for other people's health. Wear your masks. If you're out jogging, carry a mask with you. So if you can't get out of someone's way, if you're jogging without a mask, you put it on when you see people, close to you that you can't stay more than 6 feet from. So from that perspective, I think masks are essential. But when I started digging into it more from an enforcement perspective, I do also have concerns about just the amount of resources that would be dedicated to it, enforcement issues. I don't want it to escalate into confrontations. So I do have concerns about, from a borough perspective, would the amount of resources and the other possible issues arising from it be worth the number of people that might start wearing their masks in the downtown? So I think maybe there's other ways that we could achieve that by putting up, big signage in the downtown, like mask-free zone, or please wear your masks when entering this area, things like that, that could maybe achieve as much benefit with fewer resources. So I guess where I am right now, my mind might change if the numbers go up significantly again, but where I am right now is at this point in time, I feel like we can achieve some of the same benefits without using an ordinance. But I would definitely want to revisit it for sure if the numbers started going up significantly.
Okay, thank you, Mona, and you're exactly 2 minutes. Thank you. I am personally undecided on this issue. I can see the pros and the cons. So I am not decided. I would like to hear from our police chief. John, if you're willing, and if I can use a timer, 2 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Rob, and thank you everybody for this meaningful discussion, and I certainly appreciate it. Good luck with that 2 minutes, Rob. Listen, I had a conversation too so far with the mayor about this one yesterday, and as always, myself and the mayor always have meaningful discussions, and I will be remiss in my obligations as your chief not to have some open, honest, candid dialogue about this. So our staffing, as you know, in the police department is very limited. We have one officer on duty. The simple fact of the matter is, how do we choose? How do we choose on who to enforce that on? For instance, if we see 2 or 3 groups of people in the business district or down by the playground, wherever it's going to be enforced, how do we not have selective enforcement, disparity in enforcement? How do we choose individuals versus others who are going to get away from that one officer? So that's my concern right there. This coming spring, even though it's around the corner, I've been the police chief for 3 years and the emergency management coordinator coming up this fall for a year. And believe me, I do so proudly. But during the past, 2.5 years, we spent a long time building a strong relationship with the community, the business association, the civic association, elected officials. It's not the department of the not so distant past where there was problems. This could be seen as a negative contact with police. It is going to erode the public trust, the public confidence that the community has. In addition to that, many of the people that we may be citing simply have never had contact with police before. Majority of our people that live in the community, that work in the community, are law-abiding citizens. They've never really had significant contact with the criminal justice system. So that's an issue right there. In addition to that, it's also an operational one as well. For instance, the courts are right now in District Court 7 are operating on very limited days. We are still going to need the officer and any witnesses to prosecute any type of mask ordinance. That is going to be problematic. It may incur overtime. In addition to that, and people are just not going to offer payment. They're not going to remit payment promptly. They're going to offer not guilty pleas, and that's going to involve labor-intensive effort and expenses again, where we're going to have to meet that at the gate. In addition to that, Lower Merion is going to cover us. When they get jobs, they code them as 4511, which means it's just assistant Narberth. They are not going to cite themselves for something that's a borough ordinance. They're going to send us the report, and they're going to leave that discussion and that decision up to us. So overall, these are just some of the concerns that I have. And, are we going, I understand that people are worried out there. I certainly get that. And we are not anti-mask. We go out there and we handle these things on a case-by-case basis. But the one thing that I do know about the officers, we have had 911 calls about masking situations. And the officers have people skills that they've been able to diffuse these situations without citing, without taking the next step, based on our skill set, based on our personal traits and the way we handle people, that community connection that we have overall in Narberth. So these are just some of my concerns, that we have to look at the bigger picture, the 30,000-foot view. Are there pros and cons to everything? Are there certain things we can do and we can't do? We understand that. And we're going to do our job, and we always have. However, I just see this as a bridge too far. It's going to be difficult for us to enforce. And then we're talking about going into a warning phase, and then we're going to keep that person's, information. And then if they get hit 3 times, then they're going to get cited. Well, that's going to be incumbent upon me to track that. I don't know how I'm going to propose to do that, even for my own measures, considering the time that's limited for me. But I'll just give people an example. For instance, and I was telling this to the mayor yesterday, we may encounter somebody and say, sir, ma'am, you have to put your mask on. And they say, no. Okay, well, then, I'm going to ask you one more time. You're going to have to do it. It's a compliance issue and it's a borough ordinance. Otherwise, we're going to have to cite you accordingly. I understand, but no. And in addition to that, our next step would be like, okay, well, then what's your name? Can I have your identification? No, you cannot. You cannot have my identification. So in other words, what I'm saying is, how far do we want to take this? Because we're hardly going to be able to take that person over to the Lower Merion Police Station and get them positively identified for fingerprints and photographs for something, for something like a mask ordinance. It's going to be very problematic. And I can tell you, for everybody's benefit on the call, that the Lower Merion Police Station does not want us to bring such cases over for summaries, for non-traffic summary citations for a BO, a borough ordinance, where we're going to positively identify people. They have their own virus restrictions considering the pandemic since this all started on March the 12th. So these are the walls that we're going to come up against, and it's reality. It is a reality for us to have to do that. But however, if I'm not candid about this, if I'm not open and honest about the challenges that are going to confront us with this, then I'm not doing your job, the job that I'm hired to as the chief. Yeah. We've always had transparent communication, and that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this and have a meaningful discussion and really open up the floor if anybody had any concerns or questions for me about it.
Okay, John, I want to thank you for that. You're slightly over 2 minutes, but that's okay. I think you give us a more vivid picture of what it would look like, on the enforcement side. Bob would like to speak again, so I'd like to go to Bob.
Yeah, just like to circle back. There are many times in parenting where, you're very careful about what kind of rule you create because you know that you can't kind of make good on any kind of reasonable punishment if the rule's violated. And I think this happens a lot in public life too, where you kind of have to be careful about your rulemaking. So with that said, I appreciate John pointing all of that out, and it's layered actually, isn't it, John? There's real fundamental problems with the feasibility of creating a law that you can't really enforce or even process through the courts, clearly. But with that said, if we go back to Mona's suggestion, perhaps creating some kind of a banner or something, I think it might be worthwhile for us to look as a council at creating a kind of resolution that's a request that people wear their masks in the retail part of town. I'm not particularly concerned about the playgrounds or the parks. I think people who have an option to go there and to use those public resources, it's a choice to go and recreate. But it's not always a choice to walk through the downtown and go to the grocery store, or to one of the local shops where, if you need provisions. So, with that, I could imagine a banner or a resolution of some kind stating that this is really our request to the residents and the visitors of Narberth, and then a banner that follows it up like, please, this is by resolution, this is a mask zone of the downtown.
Bob, thank you. I like the suggestion.
May I just for a moment? I really like that suggestion. And then I had an idea that, there's these 8-frame signs. You can put them up periodically with like 2 or 3 rules, like you must wear a mask when you go into business. You must, please kindly keep 6 feet. So guidelines for the public using the space as big announcement signs. A number of 8-frames may end up serving the same purpose and getting us to the same goals without taxing the resource.
Okay, so I'm going to suggest that as a committee, this is a recommendation to the council. And if our colleagues on council would prefer a different solution, we will have that discussion at the council table. Does that sound reasonable?
I like that idea too, and Bob, I really liked your suggestion. I think it's a good middle ground, and it I think handles hopefully a lot of the issues that Chief Gallagher brought up, because we wouldn't be worried about fines.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. Thank you,
Rob. Excuse me, Rob. Can I just add one thing?
Yes.
Thank you, Rob. I'm sorry. Listen, to Mona's point, she brought up a very, very important issue earlier when she was opining about this, and in terms of numbers, if the numbers go up, I just want to give everybody some meaningful information about what was discussed on the 26th of August, and a follow-up conversation that I had with a representative from Narberth Ambulance on Friday, August the 28th, when I was working late. As of July 22nd, there was 23 positive cases in the borough. Obviously, none of them were fatal. We have suffered no deaths whatsoever. All those 23 cases were out of quarantine. In the beginning of August, there was one more case that was added. It was number 24. That case also was out of quarantine. So as of right now, we have no positive cases in the borough. Most of the calls that are going into Narberth Ambulance for what's known as FRI calls or code calls, medical emergencies, those calls are down significantly. And most of them in the jurisdictions with the ambulance company serves are at congregate care facilities. We, as you know, everybody on the call knows we don't have them in the borough, but those are the latest numbers that we currently have. And that was just confirmed on as latest as Friday, August 28th at 7 p.m. In anticipation of our meeting today. Now, things can always change. We know that. The mayor brought up a great point yesterday. St. Joe's and Bryn Mawr College and some surrounding higher education institutions are going back to class, and there may be an increase. There may be a spike. And we are very close to that, that epicenter. So, but those are the latest numbers that we have from the emergency management team on the 26th, last Wednesday, and followed up by a conversation that I've had with Narberth Ambulance, Matt Scanlon, on Friday, August 28th. So I just wanted to add in that Mona brought up a very, very important point, and to that end, those are the numbers.
Thank you, John. That's very helpful, and you're right that these colleges are opening. I think Haverford is opening next week, and so as our emergency management coordinator, you're in a position to really help us monitor. And if we do see an uptick in cases, we should certainly revisit that, and that could be part of our recommendation as well to the council. Thank you, John. This is really very helpful. Thank you all. So I'd like to close our mask discussion, and I believe we have someone from the public that would like to make a public comment. Go ahead.
No, I think that's just my phone number, Rob.
No, Bob, it's Lisa McCann.
Lisa's here.
Oh, there we go. Oh, hi, Lisa. Okay, I'll mute myself
Bob.
again.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lisa McCann. I live at 214 Hampton Avenue. For maybe the past year and a half or two, I have lived next door to a very disturbing barking dog. And I've been working with my neighbor on trying to reduce that disturbance. And it has been somewhat successful. I'll admit that. But in trying to have these discussions with her, I went to the borough ordinance because I thought I need to understand what I'm allowed to be annoyed by. And she needs to understand where she needs to stop being annoying. And for those of you who might not be that familiar with the borough ordinance on this, it's one sentence long. And if you'll bear with me, I'll read it to you. The keeping of dogs, chickens, or other animals or fowl under such conditions or in such a manner that by barking, crowing, or otherwise they disturb the peace and quiet of the immediate neighborhood or cause or tend to cause any danger, discomfort, or annoyance to the inhabitants or users of its streets and highways or other public property. And that's it. There's no definition of hours. There's no definition of what disturbing the peace is. There's no definition of annoyance. And everybody's threshold for all of those things, I understand, is different. And so I began to do my homework. I've got my dog diary. And, last November, I talked to Kevin Walsh because I was told by the borough that he helps you folks interpret the zoning code. And he basically said, you're seeing what's there and, it's up to anybody's interpretation. It's completely subjective. So, there are pages of incidents. I've got recordings on my phone. I've been told by the borough that, if I think it's offensive, call the police. I think that escalates it. It's like the mask discussion. It just takes it to a place that it doesn't need to go to, at least right away. Not that this is right away. I tried to reach Ed Bogley at Animal Control or Public Health in Montgomery County, and we just played phone tag and it never connected. And so in all my research, I found a great ordinance that is 2 sentences long, and I'd be happy to read it to your folks. But it's from Montgomery Township, where Montgomeryville, PA is, so not that far. And it defines limits and frequency. Their ordinance specifically addresses dogs. And so it talks about barking, bark once every 3 seconds between these hours, blah, blah, blah. And so my request back in August to Aaron, and then it was passed on to Rob, was for the borough to consider, if not in fact word for word, the Montgomery Township ordinance, and something very like it, because I feel like the offended party needs to know when they're allowed to pick up the phone. And in my case, dog party, but the chainsaw party, the electric guitar party, the whatever, needs to also know when they're allowed to perform or let their dog bark. So that's why I'm here. I've sent a copy of the ordinance to Aaron and Rob and the mayor. And thank you for perhaps considering this or opening the discussion.
Thank you, Lisa, for bringing this to our attention. And I'm sorry that you have to deal with this. I hope that it's not disturbing your sleep. That would be.
It is. It was.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So that may be why you're suggesting specific hours, because like you're saying.
But Rob, I will tell you, one of the more offensive times was 3.5 hours through the afternoon, all day. And when you're trying to get something done, that is as annoying as 11:30 at night.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can imagine. Okay.
Yes, did you contact the Narberth police?
Pardon me?
Did you contact the Narberth police and let them know?
No, is the short answer. I don't want to take it to that level when the ordinance is this vague.
Okay, but I mean, that would be a certainly an appropriate call that you could feel comfortable
I
making.
know. Thank you. But I think the ordinance needs to be, in addition to that, the ordinance needs to be more specific.
Lisa, I would like to hear the ordinance. Did you say it was Montgomery? What township did you say it was?
Montgomery Township. And they're disturbing the noise is, it's maybe, it's one very long sentence, you guys. It shall be illegal within the Township of Montgomery for any person or persons to own, possess, harbor, or control any dog or animal which makes any noise continuously and or incessantly for a period of 15 minutes, or makes such noise intermittently for 30 minutes or more, to the disturbance of any person, any time of the day or night, regardless of whether the animal or dog is physically situated in or upon private property. So it could be in the car, which has happened. Said noise being a nuisance, provided that at the time the animal or dog is making such noise, no person is trespassing or threatening to trespassing upon private property in or upon which the animal dog is situated. I thought they had the 3-minute rule, the 3-second rule, but I'm not seeing it.
So, Lisa, what I'm going to propose is that our committee review the Montgomery ordinance in more detail with your specific concerns in mind, to decide if, as a committee at our next meeting, if we want to recommend changes to our current ordinance. So,
I mean, a definition of annoyance in our ordinance or disturbing the peace, they ought to be defined. I worked for the federal government. The regs, the ordinance, the terms are always have definitions, and this doesn't.
Yeah.
Hey, Rob, I like your suggestion because, like in my 9 years on council, I'd say this has come up 3 times, and it's always the same problem with the vague language in the ordinance. It's very difficult to enforce, and it's really in the past also, this has caused an incredible amount of distress to the person who lives next to the dog. And so it doesn't happen very often, but when it does happen, it's really unfortunate. So I just wanted to second your idea of having the committee review the ordinance language.
Thank you, Bob. So unless anyone objects, I would suggest that our committee review the ordinance at our next meeting. So that would be our October meeting, the first week of October. Lisa, and you're welcome, of course, to join us again if you like.
That would be great. And my only suggestion would be that Kevin Walsh may have insight into this. He's the one that brought up the time, the number of barks per time frame.
Okay.
Lisa, can I ask, in the Montgomery ordinance, if someone violates it, how is it enforced? Do the police come out?
You're copied on my reply to Rob.
Okay, I haven't
only just sent tonight, but the ordinance is the violation and penalties are there.
Okay.
There are exceptions that are there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'm assuming as an ordinance, I mean, only you folks could answer this. It doesn't say this ordinance will be enforced by the police department, but I'm assuming that any town, borough's township ordinance is enforced by their enforcement officers. I mean, our ordinance could state differently. And, you know, one of the reasons I went to Lower Merion Township Animal Control is because the borough doesn't have that service.
Right.
And it defaults to them. And, you know, the answer often is go to the police. Well, you know, we just heard from John Gallagher, you know, the police have other things to do in some ways besides enforce this, especially when it is so subjective.
Right.
And puts them in the middle of, you know, two people having a disagreement of what is gray.
Right. But what I want you to know is that our police handle these kind of things regularly, and they know how to diplomatically go in there and work it out between the neighbors. They know how to gently. They don't go in.
The thing is, Andrea,
you know, a lighter touch will do. Yeah.
Andrea, I'm going to show my cards a little bit from my personal experience. So we love dogs. We've had dogs all our life, both my wife and I, and we had two at one time. And one of our dogs actually knocked someone over in the street and actually, you know, even harmed a person. And we were cited by the police, and the dog had to leave our home. And in retrospect, the police made the right decision, and we had to do the right thing, actually, because we had an animal that was really a menace to the community. And for some people, noise is just as menacing as being knocked over in the street by an animal or being bit. And so I, you know, I'm saying this is someone who loves dogs and who had this happen to me personally.
Right.
So this it's not just something that goes away.
No.
And in full disclosure, the family that lives next door is the daughter of Vincent Cirillo. The police have been to this house a lot for other reasons. I believe, you know, Stephanie and I have talked about this many times, and one of the discussions was left at, I would like to be a good neighbor. And I said, I'd like nothing more than that. You know, we're working on it, but the police have been to this house a lot.
So listen, I want to thank you, Lisa, for coming. We're running out of time.
Right. No. Yep.
But I'm happy to add this as a discussion item for our October meeting, and we can discuss this further as a committee then.
Great.
But Lisa, I do want to thank you for coming. And I want to just confirm with Sean, are there any other members of the public here in the waiting room? Okay. So if there is nothing else from the manager, I think we're ready then to conclude our meeting. Okay, so thank you everyone, and I will see you at our council meeting on the 16th.